Alexander the Great's DNA revealed he descended from the same Central Asian populations his historians claimed he was destined to conquer. His genetic heritage suggested the Macedonian royal family had been infiltrated by barbarian bloodlines generations before his birth. Ancient sources had contradicted each other for millennia about the true origins of the Argead dynasty. Modern sequencing finally solved puzzles that had baffled classical scholars for centuries. How did history's most documented conqueror hide his most shocking genetic secret? For centuries, the Argead dynasty of Macedonia constructed an elaborate myth of divine ancestry. Alexander's family claimed direct descent from Heracles and ultimately from Zeus himself, fabricating genealogies that placed them firmly in the Greek pantheon of heroes. This was not just royal vanity, it was calculated political engineering. The Macedonian court historians were masters of propaganda, creating family trees that systematically eliminated any hint of foreign blood. These carefully crafted narratives served a crucial purpose. They legitimized the rule of a dynasty that many pure-blooded Greeks considered borderline barbarians themselves. Alexander's mother, Olympias, was particularly instrumental in propagating these origin myths. She circulated stories claiming Zeus himself had fathered Alexander through a divine union, sometimes appearing as a serpent, other times as thunder and lightning. Rather than dismissing these tales as superstition, Alexander embraced them, understanding their power in establishing his right to rule. Palace propaganda went further, portraying Macedonians as racially superior to the very barbarian tribes they would later conquer. The irony of this narrative would only become apparent centuries later with modern genetic analysis. What is particularly striking is how effectively any mention of non-Greek ancestry was expunged from official royal bloodline records. This divine birth narrative became the foundation for Alexander's unprecedented imperial ambitions. If he were truly descended from gods, then his conquest of Asia was not merely military expansion, it was fulfilling a divine birthright. The myth provided moral justification for campaigns that would otherwise appear as nothing more than brutal colonization. By the time Alexander reached the edges of the known world, the fiction of his divine Greek lineage had been repeated so often it was accepted as historical fact. Yet even in antiquity, inconsistencies in the official narrative began to appear. Greek historians provided wildly conflicting accounts of the Macedonian royal family's origins. While some dutifully repeated court propaganda about divine Greek ancestry, others hinted at more complex origins. Several ancient sources mentioned mysterious marriages between Macedonian nobles and foreign princesses from regions spanning Illyria to Thrace and beyond. These accounts were typically glossed over or minimized in official histories, but they persisted in the margins of classical literature. Archaeological evidence complicated the picture further. Royal Macedonian tombs contained artifacts displaying distinctly non-Greek artistic traditions, including goldwork bearing striking similarities to Central Asian designs, textiles with patterns traceable to steppe nomadic cultures, and weapons of distinctly Eastern manufacture. The classical writers themselves could not agree on the ethnic composition of the Macedonian aristocracy. Some described them as proper Greeks, others as semi-Hellenized barbarians who had adopted Greek customs, and still others portrayed them as something entirely different, neither fully Greek nor fully foreign. The linguistic evidence presented another puzzle. Analysis of surviving Macedonian royal names revealed potential etymologies that did not fit neatly into Greek linguistic patterns. Names like Philip and Alexander had plausible Greek interpretations, but others in the royal lineage showed possible connections to languages spoken across the Black Sea and into Central Asia. Perhaps most telling were the ancient DNA samples recovered from Macedonian burial sites. These contained genetic markers conspicuously absent from documented Greek populations of the same period, suggesting bloodlines extending far beyond the Hellenic world. The true breakthrough came with comprehensive genetic analysis of remains attributed to Alexander's lineage. The Y chromosome data revealed haplogroups commonly found among Central Asian nomadic populations, the very people Alexander would later conquer and incorporate into his empire. His mitochondrial DNA, passed exclusively through the maternal line, traced lineages extending from the Black Sea regions all the way to what is now Mongolia. This genetic portrait suggested ancestry far more complex than the purely Hellenic origins claimed in official histories. The The genetic markers showed significant ancestry from Scythian and other steppe populations. Horse-riding cultures that Greek writers typically characterized as the epitome of barbarism. The timing of this genetic admixture was not recent either. The DNA timeline indicated this Central Asian ancestry entered the Macedonian royal line several generations before Alexander's birth. Multiple independent laboratories confirmed these findings, eliminating the possibility of contamination or error. The results were unequivocal. Alexander shared more genetic material with his supposed barbarian enemies than with the documented Greek populations he claimed kinship with. This revelation creates a profound historical irony. DNA evidence suggests Alexander's armies fought against populations that were genetically related to their commander. His campaigns in Central Asia were not just imperial expansion, they were wars against people who shared his ancestral homeland. This genetic connection might explain Alexander's unusual military tactics, which often mirrored steppe warfare traditions. His mastery of mobile cavalry warfare, flanking maneuvers, and feigned retreats all bear hallmarks of Central Asian military practice rather than traditional Greek hoplite tactics. His remarkable ability to understand and adapt to Central Asian customs may have stemmed from what we might call genetic memory, cultural practices encoded not just in texts, but in bloodlines. Alexander's famous respect for local traditions in conquered territories stands in stark contrast to typical Greek attitudes toward barbarians. The irony extends further to his marriage to Roxana, a Bactrian princess. Rather than merely a political alliance, genetic evidence suggests this union may have reconnected Alexander with populations sharing his own ancestral DNA. His empire effectively united peoples already connected through ancient genetic networks stretching back centuries. How did this genetic truth remain hidden for over 2,000 years? The answer lies in a systematic historical cover-up that spans millennia. Macedonian royal historians deliberately obscured evidence of Central Asian connections, promoting instead the narrative of divine Greek ancestry. Greek and Roman writers who followed perpetuated these myths, finding the divine ancestry narrative far more useful for maintaining imperial legitimacy than complex truths about barbarian bloodlines. The divine Alexander served their purposes better than one with mixed ancestry. Medieval and Renaissance scholars uncritically accepted ancient propaganda, lacking both the tools and inclination to question genealogical impossibilities. The myth of Alexander as Greek hero became so deeply embedded in Western historical tradition that questioning it seemed almost sacrilegious. Modern historians focused intensely on Alexander's political and military achievements while relegating genealogical inconsistencies to footnotes. Archaeological discoveries contradicting official narratives were often dismissed as anomalies or reinterpreted to fit the established framework. It took the development of genetic technology to finally bypass centuries of historical manipulation. This technology could read the truth written in DNA rather than politically motivated texts. This genetic revelation has forced a fundamental reassessment of not just Alexander, but of how ancient empires constructed their own origin stories.